What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about 5 things that I think Battlefield 6 really needs to include in order for it to be successful, as we are coming up on reveal time for the game and I'm definitely starting to get a little bit too excited. As of this video going live, I think we are around 5 or 6 weeks until EA Play usually happens, which will likely either be when they announce the game or they may have actually already announced the game by then, at which point we could either get a trailer or even a deep dive into the game from the developers. And so I guess before all of that news starts coming out, I thought it would be fun to start sort of speculating and just giving my hopes and expectations for the game. Before we get into it, I am also going to be doing a follow-up to this video covering 5 things that I think the game needs to avoid, and so be sure to turn on those notifications if you haven't already so you guys don't miss out on plenty more upcoming Battlefield 6 videos. But with that out of the way, guys, let's get stuck right into it. Now, the first thing, and arguably one of the more important things on my list here, is the addition of crossplay to Battlefield 6, allowing players to play and connect regardless of what platform they're playing on. If you guys have heard any of the rumours about the game so far, a lot of these so-called quote-unquote leaks, I hate calling them leaks because a rumour is not a leak, but anyway, these leaks are saying that the game will in fact be crossplay, which I personally do think is almost a sure thing at this point, and whether it is or not, it 100% needs to be a part of the game if Battlefield 6 is going to be successful. In just the last 2 to 3 years now, Warzone, Apex Legends, Fortnite, Rocket League and Minecraft, among plenty of others as well, have all added crossplay to their games, and with these pretty much being some of the biggest games in the world, I think that has officially set the standard as to what other games need to achieve if they want to compete with these AAA titles. 5 or so years ago, we all thought crossplay was virtually an impossible thing to achieve. If you asked me 10 years ago about something I wanted in gaming that I never thought was possible, I probably would have said crossplay, and yet here we are in 2021 with pretty much all of the top games having crossplay enabled, and so far it seems to be a huge success. Crossplay has taken away so much restraint in regards to which console you buy and which friends you can and can't play with, and because of that I'd imagine game sales in general are probably going up, since people are much more willing to buy a game if it means they're finally able to play with their friends that they can't normally play with. If I'm on Xbox and my mates are all on PlayStation, they normally don't play Battlefield, yet now that we can possibly play together, I'm almost certain that those guys would be keen to give the game a chance, since we can play together and make the experience a lot more enjoyable by squadding up. So I think crossplay is an absolute must, not only for the success of the game in terms of its sales and revenue, but also just in the eyes of the player base, as this is the standard now, and any game moving forward that doesn't have crossplay is destined for failure compared to the likes of Call of Duty and these other top tier titles. Now, moving on, the next thing on my list, which is something that I've really noticed in Battlefield 5, and that is the map design that includes and incorporates all game modes, not just Conquest or just Breakthrough, for example. In Battlefield 5, it seems as though a lot of the maps were kind of just designed for, say, 1 or 2 different modes. For example, maybe a larger map was mostly just made for Conquest or Breakthrough, and therefore when you get those maps in Rush or any of the smaller modes, the map just didn't really work, and honestly it made a lot of the maps just feel kind of shitty and unenjoyable for me, and I know many others share the same opinion. Battlefield 5 really made Conquest quite a boring mode for me personally. Conquest was always such a great mode back in the older games, and for some reason in Battlefield 5 I just didn't enjoy it nearly as much. Breakthrough was much more enjoyable for me, and the maps seemed like they were a lot of the time designed in that way, especially with a lot of the Pacific maps where they just kind of seemed to be perfect for Breakthrough but not really perfect for Conquest. Now that's great when you're playing Breakthrough, but honestly on a lot of the maps whenever I was playing Conquest, it just felt like the map wasn't quite made for the game mode, and yeah, it just zapped a lot of the enjoyment for me personally. I'd argue that Battlefield 5 has the worst maps of any Battlefield game ever, and that didn't really seem like it was to do with anything other than just the fact that they didn't really suit certain modes like the older games, where it seemed like one map seemed to work pretty much perfectly on any mode that you played it in. It's kind of hard to put a finger on exactly what needs to be changed, and I'm certainly no level designer so I can't really talk at the end of the day, but I'm sure some of you guys will know what I mean, especially if you compare the Battlefield 5 maps to the Battlefield 1 or Battlefield 4 maps from back in the day. Moving on, the next thing that I think really needs an improvement in Battlefield 6 is simply just the communication from developers to the players and vice versa. Now, this isn't a knock on DICE specifically, as honestly I think this is the case with literally every single video game ever made. Communication can always be improved, and so far in all my years of gaming, I'm yet to really see a game that is constantly communicating daily or weekly with the fans about what needs to be fixed or what content is going to be added and stuff like that. Now, to be completely fair, I actually think DICE does one of the best jobs at this out of any of the AAA dev studios that I've paid attention to over my time playing video games. I think they do a great job at it right now, but I do just think it could improve a whole lot more, and just because it is good compared to other studios, that doesn't make it perfect by any means. I think it's really important in this game for the developers to constantly stay in touch with the game changes, to get feedback and genuinely listen to what they and their communities are saying. Too often in gaming, especially with shooters for some reason, you just see a lot of really dumb stuff happen to the game when it's clearly not what the community is asking for, and yet it happens anyway. Then it becomes a whole drama and it needs to be fixed, and it just seems like all that kind of stuff results in a huge waste of time and sort of divides the community when it really shouldn't have even happened in the first place. In Warzone, for example, there are so many things that the community begs for in regards to just simple quality of life changes, and the devs 110% see all of it. I can absolutely assure you guys, having worked closely with EA myself through the Game Changer program, the devs do genuinely watch videos and read tweets and Reddit posts. They absolutely pay attention to the community, and yet sometimes it just feels like they still don't respond when we clearly know that they can hear us. Even just in Battlefield 5 as a somewhat recent example, the whole time to kill drama that happened halfway through the game's lifespan was something that literally no one complained about. They decided to change it and it completely messed with the game, and then the community went absolutely berserk at them over it, at which point they had to revert it, and stuff like that is what can often hinder games so much, with developers changing stuff that no one asked for, wasting time on it, and then just reverting it back when the community cries about it, leaving them in a spot where they pretty much ended back right where they started, while also just annoying the community in doing so, since none of that needed to happen anyway. So all of that maybe sounds a bit harsh. Like I said, I do think DICE actually do a pretty decent job compared to many other companies out there, but I just think they really need to focus on the fans and the community with this game and find that perfect middle ground between what they want for the game and what the fans want, as at the end of the day it is their game and they have, you know, their own vision for it, but we, the players, are the ones paying and supporting the game, and I think we do deserve a pretty decent say in what goes on within the game as well. Next up, and this one kind of ties into that last one to be honest, this one is that I think they really need to pay very close attention to the weapon balancing and just general balancing overall, as that was one of the biggest letdowns in Battlefield 5, honestly, having so many weapons that were just frustratingly overpowered and kind of never really got fixed. The prone MMGs and prone anti-tank rifles were without a doubt some of the most frustrating things in that game for me personally. Getting killed by some idiot proning in a bush with a one-hit kill rifle when I can't even see them honestly made me want to uninstall the game at certain points, and it really does take away from the game when there are certain things that you just cannot avoid at all. The tanks and the planes also felt a little bit more OP in this game compared to normal, whether that was partly due to the map design or what, I'm not really sure, as in Battlefield 4 I think the verticality of the maps made the vehicles much more balanced compared to in Battlefield 5, where it's often just like an open paddock and there's a tank that is obviously going to kill you if you go anywhere near it. So little things like that are what I hope they really manage to sort of get right and find that middle ground between having certain things being strong but not being overpowered. At the end of the day, balancing will always be a hard thing to manage in any shooter, and there 110% will always be a meta in any shooter, as it's just impossible to completely balance like 50 different weapons to be exactly as strong as each other. But I just hope that they at least get it a little bit tighter than what they had in Battlefield 5, as that was honestly a large part in why I stopped playing the game. Just dying to the exact same stuff every single game when you literally can't even avoid it is pretty tedious, and if they make that mistake again, I fear the same thing will happen with Battlefield 6 if it isn't fixed fast enough. Now, last but definitely not least, we have the final thing that I think Battlefield 6 needs, and that is a smooth, successful launch of the game in October or November of this year. With multiple of the most recent DICE titles, those being Battlefront 2 and Battlefield 5, the launches of those games were absolutely butchered by the drama surrounding both games for their various different reasons, and not only was it the drama, but it was also just the state of both games, both being fairly buggy and just not being the game that the developers wanted it to be. A third failed launch in a row for DICE just has disaster written all over it. If there's any kind of dramas around in the game, or the game is just a mess, I honestly think that it could affect the entire future of the game in the same way that it did with Battlefront 2, where sure, it had an awesome turnaround and it turned out to be probably one of the best Star Wars games ever made, but it also could have been so much more and it could have been supported for many years to come, all because it was playing catch up from day one and they just never really got to get ahead of the curve and take that game to the next level. The other thing I really worry about is that if the game gets pushed back, which let's face it, it is a possibility in this current climate where people are still working from home and we've seen multiple games getting pushed back in the last year or so, I think that could be a disaster in itself, just because I know how desperate people are for this game to come out, and even though I think many people would probably accept and understand a delay, I think there are also so many people out there who would instantly just sort of give up on the game and move on to something else, and that is something they surely want to avoid at all costs. Battlefield 6 needs to be the redeeming game in this franchise, especially with how well Call of Duty has done in recent years, and if the game launches in a really good state with no drama, it's well received, it has crossplay and overall just makes the community happy, then I think it will be on track to be the Battlefield game that we've sort of all been wanting for the last 3 or 4 years now, at which point it can redeem the franchise a bit after the sort of turbulent time that Battlefield 5 caused over the last few years. That is going to do it though for my list here, guys. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think the game needs to include, or whether you agree or disagree with any of the points that I made, and like I said, be sure to keep an eye out in the coming weeks as I will be making a sort of counter to this video, covering some really important stuff that I think the game needs to avoid. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like down below, and if you are new, then consider subscribing to the channel with those notifications on. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.